Hey there, and welcome to the Even If podcast. I'm your host, Christy Lowe, and I'm so glad you're here. If you've ever quit something or been ready to quit, you've probably asked yourself questions like, when do I quit? When do I stay? Is God releasing me from this, or am I just burned out? Joining me today is Mary R. Snyder. With over 20 years on the stage, behind the stage, and booking others onto the stage, Mary is this unique combination of message craftmaster and event business expert. She's also lived enough life to know that sometimes you want to quit. And sometimes you know it's time to say goodbye to a season of life. Maybe you know that feeling too. Mary and her podcast, Take the Stage, has been a huge blessing to me, and I can't wait for you to meet my friend. Her wit and humor are just what we need today as she shares various experiences from what it's like when you aren't ready to leave but God has called you out, or staying when God tells you it isn't time to go. Enjoy a few laughs along the way today, because life with Mary is anything but dull. In between that Southern accent and occasional sarcasm are bits of wisdom we can use and apply right where we are. So, without further ado, let's dive in. I'm here today with the wonderful Mary Snyder. She has generously agreed to spend some time with us because Mary confided in me something that kind of caught me off guard. And I went, oh my gosh, you have to come on my podcast and talk about this, because this is exactly what many of you have talked about that you need to hear. So we're talking today about what we do whenever we feel like we need to quit. And so, Mary, thank you so much for joining us. I am so very glad you are here.
Oh, Christy, thank you so much for having me. And I feel like, so I'm the token quitter.
No, you're not.
I feel like that's what I am. And I'm okay with that.
You are not okay, we have all quit things in life. All of us have quit things, okay? But I think I need to give our listeners a little bit of background, how you and how our paths intersected, because I went to a podcast conference in Dallas last summer, and when I went, you were the MC for one of the sessions I was at. You said something about, I have a podcast about speakers, and I've been in real estate. I'm not a speaker. And I was like, I think I need to listen to her podcast. Well, I'll start listening to it. I end up speaking at some events, and before I know it, Mary and I are besties, and she just doesn't even realize it. And so, and I say that tongue in cheek to my listeners who don't understand that Mary is a hoot, y'all. She is a hoot and a holler. Not just a hoot, she's a hoot and a holler. And so Mary was able to help. I mean, you really have. You've helped me learn a lot about speaking, a lot about the speaking life. But your podcast has been something that I have personally listened to for now well over a year, and I would be willing to bet I've listened to almost every episode you've put out, and that's a lot of episodes, sister. But we met at a conference again this past summer. We were at another conference together, and you told me that you were thinking about quitting podcasting.
I was 130 episodes in, Christy, and I mean, how many times can I say things about how to be a speaker? I feel like I've said it all, but I know this beyond a shadow of a doubt is God works through his people. And you were one of the first people that I met. We met on day one. And one of the first conversations you were talking about the podcast. And I think I looked at you and go, well, I'm thinking about quitting. I just didn't feel like I had anything else to say. Now, can I tell them the deal we made?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, y'all, we made a deal. I told her I would keep doing it if she would send me ideas for what to talk about, which she did. And some of them were fabulous. Some of them weren't. Some of them weren't good. But some of them were fabulous. Some of them I just went, yeah, that's nice. Let somebody else talk about that. But some of them were really incredibly good. Things I had not thought about, like, what do you do after a conference? What should you be doing afterwards? I'm doing one coming up on retreats, because I've never talked about the power of retreats for a speaker. And I think they're very important and powerful. So I'm doing that. So it's really helped me get outside of my own head by listening to the ideas you're sending me. So I appreciate that. And you and a couple of other people that I met were like, yeah, I love your podcast. I just found it. I'm like, where y'all been? Where y'all been? Because I've been doing this for a while. But I realized that even though I've been doing it for a while, it's still brand new to some people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to keep going until the Lord says stop.
Okay, so how long had you been at that place where you were like, I think I just want to quit?
I had been at that place for about 3 months.
Okay.
So I was about 3 months into wrestling with, do I have anything else to say? And going back through, I don't know how everyone does their podcast. You know, Christy, you probably have some big fancy way of keeping up with past episodes. Mine are kind of like I go look through my feed on like my podcast feed on Apple Podcasts. That's how fancy I am. So yes. I can look back and see what I talked about this year. And I feel that's as good as I'm going to get, because I'm not going back to 22. Because Mary of 2022 is not Mary of 2023. And Mary of 2020, who started this little adventure, y'all, we've all changed since 20. We've lived a whole different life is what we've happened. So
you started a speaking, by the way, the listeners who don't know you, you started a speaking podcast for speakers and the speaking stage.
Yes.
In 2020 during COVID, like when we were all stuck at home, which I love. I think that's hilarious.
Well,
just God's irony.
The thing is I didn't even get the irony for about 2 years. I mean, I literally did not get it until I was telling someone. I said, yeah. So the reason I started the podcast is I worked in live events and everybody had lost all their bookings. So I started this podcast called Take the Stage, when nobody was taking anybody's stage. And as I said it, I said, isn't God funny? Because I didn't even realize that was ironic. So it's okay.
It's okay.
It gave us all something to do and work on.
God bless you.
God bless her. Just bless her.
Bless her heart. Do y'all say
Bless
that? You're
heart.
from Alabama.
Oh, we
bless
do say.
Her heart.
And if I say that, that is not a kind statement.
No.
As Southerners, we know how to turn a phrase. It's like if you wear something that maybe I don't love, I might call it a brave choice.
Yes. Yes.
You know?
Sometimes I'll say, well, that's very interesting.
It's an interesting choice.
That is so very interesting. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. When I was preparing for this episode, I got to be honest with you, there's no way to actually prepare for an episode with the great Mary R. Snyder, because you never know if you're going to end up talking about bras or which is what we kind of bonded over to begin with.
I have one on right now. I bought one.
You got one?
I do, and I'm wearing it. And let me tell you, my life has been changed. Thank you.
I mean, I'm glad that I could change your life like you have changed my life. Yes. Well, yeah, we bonded over. I was sharing with her something I don't even know how it came up, but somehow it came up about how she needed this particular kind of bra. And I'm not a sponsor for this bra company, so we'll just let them remain anonymous. However, she has now seen the ways, and yeah, anyways. But back to seriousness, because, you know, we can feed off of each other like nobody's business. And you're one of those people, you get my sarcastic humor, which is fabulous. I wish
joy.
Everybody. Yes.
Not everybody gets us.
No, they don't. And that's okay. I'm an acquired taste, and that's okay. I'm really okay with it being an acquired taste.
Yeah, I am too.
Yeah. Okay, so all right, talk to me though. Let's talk about this, okay? Because you decided you were going to quit. Okay? Mm-hmm. And I suspect there are many of us, myself included. I don't think it necessarily has to be just a job. It could be a relationship, it could be a situation they're in. It could be the church they're going to, their volunteer position. I mean, you know, there could be a lot of things that people are thinking about quitting. And when we think about quitting, I think that Christian culture a lot of times puts a lot of guilt on us if we are in any kind of a ministry of any kind, like the Sunday school teacher who's burned out. Right. You know, is quitting always a bad thing?
No. I think it's a seasonal thing. I think everything has a season. I don't believe that this podcast will last another 5 years. I know that I sat down with the Lord and it was very clear I am to do it through the end of the year. And I'm taking the month of December off because I think that's just a time when people aren't listening as much and life is busy. So I'm going to take the month off. But I've been the girl who stayed too long. I've been the one who should have left the position. Because here's the problem, Christy. If we hold on too long, we're taking up a space that's meant for someone else.
Yeah.
And
I know.
It's one of the things that I want to be sure that if I'm supposed to leave, then someone's supposed to come and fill that space that the Lord has allowed, or maybe for a season it's not. But it's like in church, when you mention church, and listen, there was a season my husband and I had the 2-year-olds that they were actually between the 2s and they were out of the toddler stage, but not to the preschool stage. I refer that to my season in Hades, but I don't use that word. I love children, mostly if other people are taking care of them, unless they're my children or grandchildren. And these were not mine. And they were very opinionated little people. Like one time I brought whales instead of goldfish, and they flat out told me those were subpar goldfish. And I was like, well, isn't this fancy? So
Today's lesson is about gratitude, children.
you bougie bunch of kids.
My son has an Amazon shipment every other week of those big, huge goldfish boxes. He's almost 17 and he still eats goldfish like they are going out of style. So I just have Amazon subscribe and save. They just come to my house every other week. There's a big old box of them. He goes through them. I never run out. And so thank you, Jesus, for Amazon, but not whales. No, ma'am.
Not whales are subpar. They are subpar. But typically 3-year-olds are not aware of that. As a tip. So anyway, there was a season when we did that. Now, I did it because that is my husband's love language. It is not mine. We did it for 18 months. I know exactly how many days that is. And it was time to go. But we had to step out before someone stepped in. And the guilt of the church is that we have officially abandoned all children. Hear me if you're listening to me and you're in a place they're like, well, you can't quit because we don't have anybody. You listen to what God tells you to do. Because if you're showing up to serve and you are angry and you are ill, that is not who needs to be serving, particularly the little children that needed the goldfish or anyone. And that includes Bible study. I've led Bible study when my heart wasn't right and I wasn't blessing anyone. Now, God will use it because he even worked through a talking donkey, but we have to know when it's time to go.
We do. And you thought it was your time to go, which is why we're here today. But ultimately, you knew you decided it wasn't, which I'm personally grateful for. And everybody else who listens to your podcast, here's my question. And I don't know the answer to this. Sometimes I try to prep people, but Mary told me she didn't read the notes I sent her. So I can ask her anything. I have permission to ask anything I want. My question really is, did you feel like what you were doing was making a difference, or were you tired? Or what was it? Because I think sometimes if we think we're not making a difference, that can often lead us to go, well, maybe I shouldn't even be doing this.
That's exactly where I was. And the struggle with anything in ministry is oftentimes we're doing it in a vacuum. Because a podcast is going out, and I don't know, I can see who downloads it. I mean, not individually, I don't know who you are, but I can see how many people have downloaded it. But I don't hear from them. So not hearing, I just was like, is this even making a difference anymore? Does anyone care? Now, a lot of that's on me. Because I had gone through what I call the dark season. It's the season where I'm not out speaking. There's no conferences. I'm not on the road. That's a hard season because you are pulled out of that. Usually happens from about November until the early part of the summer. So that's a long stretch in there. But I think for people like us, speakers, people who are ministering, we have to get in a place where we can be with our people. When I was an itinerant speaker, I was on the road more, so I was out with people more. Now that I'm a teacher and a coach and a storyteller, I work more with either I'm working with corporate clients, or actually I work with nonprofit and corporate clients. So that's one type of relationship. But my speakers, I typically only see at conferences, and those tend to cluster in the summer months. I don't know. Why does everybody want to do them in the summer? Why is that?
There were like 3 this year that were all on the same week. And I was like, well, we have to pick one. So
I'm going to do mine 6 months later. I'm just going to need you to know it'll be 6 months. So
it's like we need a revival in the middle of the year for,
yeah.
What is
Well, that would be
Yeah,
December. So that's not the best time, but maybe January.
Yeah. I think
January
so.
is a great time, particularly if we have it at the beach.
Oh, you could do it any day and I would go to the beach. As it turns out, my squad goal in life is to actually live on the beach someday.
What beach?
I don't care, but if I got to choose, it would probably be somewhere on 30A in Florida, like right there, the beautiful, like I don't care. It could be the ugliest beach in the world and still be.
Well, Alabama, just so your listeners know, I'm just going to do a little tourism plug for Alabama. Alabama has some of the prettiest beaches in the lower 48. And 30A is very much like that. 30A is just down from Alabama, across the state line. That Gulf Coast is my dream, and that's what I love. So,
yes. Okay. Well, we could be neighbors when we retire if you want to.
I'm in. You know. I'm totally in.
Okay. Okay. So one of the things I heard you say just a second ago when you were talking, you were like, well, you were talking about how it was a season. Okay.
Yes.
And I'm going to go back to that because I think we have to know when to quit, when it's time to quit. But I think that there is something about understanding that everything has a season and that there is a time to persevere in something if you don't think the Lord has released you from it. But I think the key on that is praying through what it is that the Lord is directing you to. Is this the end of a season, or are you just burned out?
Is it time to walk out? And I think that for me, that's always been the hardest thing to do, because I typically, when I do something, I go all in 110%. And I still am all in. And had I really prayed about it? No. I was just lonely. Now, I'll be honest with you, Christy, I was in a job, in a career, and God was very clear, it's time to go. And I was like, yeah, I don't think so. This went on for 2 years, to the point of my own detriment, to the point that I literally had a door shut in my face. And I don't mean figuratively, like I walked into a room and someone pushed me out and said, we don't need you here, and pulled the door closed. And that was the sign. And I literally heard the Lord say, do you get it now?
Oh,
and I was like, oh yeah, I guess it's time to go. And it was such a great thing. I mean, it was hard, don't get me wrong. A lot of tears, a lot of unkind words. I had a very dear friend that walked with me through that season, and she said, do you see it now? You need to go. This is not where you need to be. It's no longer healthy. This is a toxic place for you. Didn't mean it was toxic for everyone. It was toxic for me. I left, best decision I ever made, and ended up where I needed to be, and in just a great season. Now, I recently left a job I had been with for almost 8 years. I worked with a major ministry, Compassion International, and I didn't want to leave. And I spent months praying about it. Because first of all, it's really good, and they send you a paycheck every 2 weeks, like clockwork. I mean, just like clockwork.
Wow.
It's fun. It's fun. And I loved the mission, and I loved what I was doing. Now, what I was doing had changed a lot, because I was in live events. I was a live event producer. I coached speakers to stand on stage and talk about compassion. For months, I could not sleep. If you've ever had anxiety, and I'm not an anxious person, I would wake up and it's the first thing that hit my brain. Do I quit? I finally had the gumption, and it truly was what it was, and that's the Lord. I was talking to my boss. I was pitching in this whole new idea for me to do for the organization. And he loved the idea. He said, Mary, it's a great idea. He said, but it's not going to fly right now because, we just come out of COVID and a lot of things were going on. And I paused and I said, well, what if I just quit and I did it on the side? And I almost threw up when I said that because
Did it just fall out of your mouth?
it fell out of my mouth. I think the Holy Spirit kicked it out. And the minute I said it, immediately I was like, oh my gosh. And then I was like, oh, okay, it's time to go. We talked about it. And he said, I want you to pray about this. I want you to make sure this is a big, big decision. I said, you're right.
Yeah.
And health insurance, let's talk about all the things. And so I told him, I said, okay, I've been praying about it. I said, okay, I'm going to let you know Thursday. Well, Tuesday, I called him and I said, I've made my decision. He said, I thought it was going to be Thursday. I said, yeah, apparently that was just me. The Lord had nothing to do with Thursday. He was not invested in Thursday. So once I made the decision, I never felt one bit of anxiousness about it. Mm. It was exactly what I was supposed to quit that. That was where it was time to walk away. And they're doing beautifully. The person that took my position is doing wonderfully and everything's great. As far as the podcast, I was just lonely. And this is what I want to encourage your listeners. If you're lonely, invite somebody in. Get you a Christy Lowe to text you a meme every once in a while. Get that person in your life that you can say, hey, this is rough. Tell me if I'm making a difference. Because here's the thing. In this world we're in, particularly in the speaking, writing, podcasting, Christian communication world, people really don't get us. I've been married to my husband for 30-something years. Let's not get technical. 31, 32, it's thereabouts.
Wow, you were a child bride.
I was a baby. I was an infant.
Yeah.
I was betrothed in the cradle.
Crib betrothals.
Crib betrothals, they're big here in the South. No, they're not. Do not write that down. It's not a thing. It's how rumors get started. But to this day, that man, if somebody asks him what I do, he will go, well, I'm not real sure, but she travels a lot. I could be an international spy.
You might be.
I
wondered. I kind of wondered if you were. I wasn't. I kind of had you on the podcast just so I could see if you really were. But turns out you're really good at your undercover.
I'm excellent at it. Excellent.
You are absolutely.
I'm actually not even from the South. I'm from Brooklyn.
This is literally, you are my favorite. Can I just tell you? I just adore you. My gosh, we are gonna I knew this was going to be the highlight of my day because my love, you are amazing. And what I keep hearing you say is you need people if we're lonely.
Yeah.
I think that one of the things I've realized is that sometimes whenever you said that about as soon as you knew it was time to quit and the words fell out of your mouth, I think sometimes God withholds that peace. You know, that peace that the Holy Spirit gives us when we know we're doing the right thing. We wrestled for about a year and a half with leaving the church we had been at for our kids' whole lives. Yeah. Loved the people. It was not some dramatic, horrible thing, but we sensed the Lord. He had shut the door. He had told us it was time to go. It was not because of the people there, but we knew that what he was calling us, he had called us to go in a different direction, and we wanted to honor the Lord with that, but we drug our feet for a good 6 months.
Yeah.
Because we didn't want to have to just say, we love you guys. We knew they would take it personally. We knew it,
of course.
or we thought you're gonna see this as an affront, and it's not.
Right.
We love you,
right?
But we know that the season has come to an end. But as soon as we did, he ushered in this peace and the confirmation you've done the right thing. It didn't make it necessarily any easier, but I think sometimes when we refuse to quit, we're being disobedient.
Right.
You're being disobedient when God tells you to do something and you don't do it. Doesn't matter what it is. Quit, stay, heel, roll over, whatever.
All the things.
All the things as our dog, as Rufus sleeps behind. He's been such a good dog today. I'm so proud of him. Rufus is being such a good boy today. But yeah, like when we don't obey him, just the lack of peace that we have. And did you feel a lack of peace whenever you had said, okay, I'm out? Like with quitting the podcast? Let me make sure I clarify that.
No, I did not.
Okay.
I was wrestling with it. And I wasn't wrestling with God. I was talking to a group of people about quitting. And they're like, yeah, you could quit. I mean, you could just like run all the episodes, or you could just do this, or you could do that. In fact, I had told my podcast editor, hey, I am through September the 11th. And apparently I chose that as my end date. I mean, because, let's go out in a dramatic sweep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well done, ma'am.
But I got back from that conference and I emailed her and I said, I'm not done. But once I made the decision to stay, it's when the peace came.
Well, personally, I'm so glad that you listened to what God was trying to get your attention toward. I'm equally grateful that you were willing to come and just be vulnerable in the podcast and say, hey, this is what I went through and this is where I am. Because I know people, they struggle with knowing when to quit, how to quit, should I quit, should I not? And then the guilt that often comes with it. And your candor is always so very welcome on this podcast. You're the best, Mary Snyder. You really are. You have been a gift and a blessing to me. I mean, like, I could not be doing this without some of the things that you have given me. You've given me tools. I know you have given countless others tools. You're just a gift and a joy. You're just a joy.
Thank you so much for saying that. I truly appreciate it, and I do not take it lightly. I am so blessed. Let me just go into Christian white women syndrome here. But I am truly blessed that I get to, I know, but
I just snorted.
That's what Christian white women say, particularly old Christian white women. I get to do this. I do not take it lightly that I get to use the experiences God allowed me to have over this last many, many years, many, and probably even another many. And I get to help people do what God's called him to do. I don't take it lightly. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you. Guys, I will link Mary's podcast for any of you who want tips on your speaking career, or if you are a public speaker. There's a lot of people who do public speaking, teachers, administrators, anyone in the workforce. A lot of you have to stand up and give presentations and speak. And if you want to be better at it, I can tell you who you need to listen to, and it is absolutely 1000% Mary Snyder. And so I'll link her show in our show notes for everybody. And Mary, thank you. I really do. I keep saying thank you. I keep saying it, but I just mean it. Please, if you decide to quit again, I want you to know this. If the Lord releases you from it, then you will have no bigger supporter. And if you ever need a cheerleader until he does set you into that next season and open that door into the next season, all you have to do is say, Christy, I need some more podcast ideas.
Need some love. I need some love.
I need some more podcast ideas. And I'm a little timid to text you and be like,
you text me
Mary,
anytime you want.
Well, no. I really do. I'll come up with an idea and I'm like, she's going to think I'm a freaking stalker. Like,
I don't care.
Hey, I know, but you're just as precious as they come.
No, so please text me anytime. I'll just ignore it if I don't want it.
That's fine.
And here's the deal.
You sound like my children.
I am. My phone's been turned on silent since 2018. And it's never going to bother me. I mean, people are like, I don't want to bother you. I'm like, girl, I got the do not disturb on it most of the time. I don't even know how to get it off half the time. I'm like, why is that on there? Because something's on your calendar and it's automatically linked. So you text me anytime. I love getting texts from you.
You're adorable. Well, come back on the show sometime.
I'd love to.
I'll tell you what, come back on the show when God does close the door.
Okay.
And I really mean this. I would love to do a follow-up episode with you whenever the Lord does end this season. And let's talk about that whenever that comes. I would love that.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, friends, thanks so much for being here. Y'all are awesome. I hope you have enjoyed this conversation as much as I have, because she's one of my favorite humans, and I'm just grateful for her time today. And as always, guys, if you have questions or you want to reach out, I'd love for you guys, if you haven't already subscribed to the show, please go ahead, subscribe, like it. It sure does help us. And then you don't ever miss an episode, especially whenever someone like Mary Snyder comes on to share her wit and wisdom. So thanks for being here, and good Lord willing, I will see you guys next week.